And welcome to the Daily Space Weather. We're back to 0 sunspots, it looks like. The main feature is a coronal hole. We've got some interesting absorption features down here. We'll show you a close-up of that momentarily. That and lots more coming at you from the Smash News Network, least busted name in news. Let's get to it. Here's your colorized magnetogram. We've got sunspots setting here in the southwest. There is still a chance of solar flares. We have a coronal mass ejection to cover as well. It looks like it's partially Earth-directed. We can expect a glancing blow from that. Here's the SDO 171 angstrom view, my favorite wavelength. Possible active region rising up here in the northeast as we forecasted yesterday based on the magnetic data. It's magnetic, that data. Here are those setting active regions here in the west. This is 335 angstroms, one of the many ionized iron ultraviolet light spectra that the SDO covers. And here are those fascinating absorption features. So when you see dark features on these AIA wavelengths, those dark features are not the ionized iron in 335 wavelengths. They're some other stuff blocking the signal from that. So when you see these bright areas with these darker filaments, that's not actually the iron. That is a lack of the iron. This is a graph of how much of that ionized state of iron there is. The radio flux has dropped all the way down to 89 solar flux units, so very low levels of solar activity, and an uptick in seismicity. We'll get to that as well. 89 is the new radio flux number, and the sunspot number is going to drop down to 0 unless a sunspot suddenly forms. Space Weather Enthusiast dashboard expecting a little additional geomagnetic unrest this morning. We already got it. Besides that, no space weather storms in the forecast. Taking a brief look at seismicity here, we saw multiple 6-magnitude earthquakes and some activity in the U.S. as well. The main activity is around the southwestern Pacific Rim. Although Guam saw a deep quake at 5.0, Indonesia saw a deep quake at 5.0. The largest quakes of the past 24 hours were 6.0s. So this one occurred at 2:09 this morning on the 3rd of January. That's 6.0 there. Also a deep quake there. Keep in mind, folks, any earthquake can be a foreshock. Let's hope a 6.0 isn't a foreshock to a larger quake. Western Texas saw a 3.7. Leave us a comment if you felt that. There's the largest quake of the past 24 hours. That was a 6.2 at Taiwan. That occurred at 9:46 Universal Time. Pardon our lateness. We did stream a meteorology segment live to YouTube today as a YouTube exclusive. If you didn't check that out, make sure you check that out. Our meteorology segment. Seeing some major snow striking the mid-Atlantic states. Shivaluch is the first volcano on our list here. Located on the Kamchatka Peninsula, Shivaluch is exploding, producing a 12,000-foot ash plume. That's a flight level 120, flight level 080 at Suwanosejima as it explodes. That's on the Ryukyu Islands. Semeru on the East Java Isle, one of the Indonesian islands in the archipelago of Indonesia. 15,000-foot ash plume as Semeru explodes. Fuego exploding as well. 15,000-foot ash plume over Guatemala, flight level 150. Flight level 200 over Nevado del Ruiz. The Colombian volcano exploding as well. Sangay and Revenador, both located in the nation of Ecuador, are exploding. Flight level 200 from Sangay, flight level 150 from Revenador. That's a 15,000-foot ash plume. And intermittent emissions are still coming from Sabancaya in Peru. Please don't pole vault the caldera. Please do support our channel via our links below this video. One of the ways you could do it is by picking up some merch. If you haven't seen the Universum Liberate merch yet, the graphic depicts the Milky Way galaxy being instantly traversed by videos like this one. We've got the key to the concepts that make the galaxy work. That's why we decided to pick this imagery for the Universum Liberate, the Galactic Federation Special Forces. You're invited to join. Tell your friends and foes about it. To quote Geddy Lee, "If I could wave my magic wand, I would set everybody free. Universum liberate. Make it our #1 seller on our Redbubble shop. You can find links to that below the video as well as on the homepage at smAsho.com. Click the smAsho merch link to find those products. And perhaps consider becoming a member of the Smash team. Thanks to our gold, silver, and annual gold paid-up members. You can find links on the homepage to that as well. That graphical link as well as up here at the top. The Smash team, smashomash.com/Smash team. We've replaced Patreon with something superior. It's magnetic. Here's some magnetic data. So we saw some pretty spiky readings here in the tail end of that coronal hole wind stream. And indeed, we saw a strong negative BZ signal in the solar wind. We'll get to that in a minute. First, some more magnetic data. And is there a South Pole current sheet here at Earth yet? It looks like indeed it is. We didn't wait to make the video just until this occurred, but Earth is now in a South Pole current sheet in all likelihood. Keep in mind this data is over an hour old from the time we recorded the video. And we may see some activity rising in the northeast as we forecasted yesterday when I saw this imagery. Yes, perhaps we can use magnetic field data in order to forecast sunspots. That could be a new thing. We've been forecasting coronal mass ejections with near 100% accuracy for pushing a year. And here's a line of sight view as the cycle progresses. The coronal hole line of sight plots next. And the main feature on the sun is actually a coronal hole. This South Pole oriented one you can see down here. That's the main feature. Here's a great view of it in 193 angstroms from the SDO. Again, down to 0 sunspots, folks. 0 sunspots. There still is some significant likelihood of significant flares, but that likelihood is going to wane as the day progresses today. Sunspot 2916 rotating out of view here. And as our regular viewers are well aware, we can see coronal mass ejections without any sunspots. Again, the main feature here is this coronal hole. It's South Pole oriented. There's a great view of that from the SDO. No major flares over the past 24 and indeed 48 hours. There was an M-class flare to kick off the day on New Year's Day. No spikes in the proton flux were generated by that. No relativistic particles have struck Earth. At least not that we can tell, not that we've detected. And the geomagnetic unrest that we saw last night was mainly a result of two things. This little increase in the solar wind speed and this strong negative BZ signal. That strong negative BZ signal lends to induced currents in Earth's magnetosphere. And so those two things combined caused like a 4 to 6 hour period of geomagnetic unrest. Probably some more aurora imagery. Make sure you follow us on Twitter if you don't. We share lots of auroral images. Twitter.com/smashomash. And we've got a new social media site to advertise as well. We'll talk about that at a later time. Getter. Yeah, getter.com. Gettr. You can find us there at smAshomash. So here's that geomagnetic unrest period. Something like 4 to 6 hours there of geomagnetic unrest. As a result of the solar wind parameters we just covered, here's the geospace over the past 4 hours. It's Earth's magnetic moment from space. The model is in nanopascals, which is magnetohydrodynamic pressure. We've still got significant pressure here around Earth's magnetic moment from space. As that high-speed coronal hole wind stream slowly subsides, next ground magnetic perturbations. This scale is nanotesla magnetic flux density, and it's from the surface of the planet. We showed you the magnetic moment from space. Here's the magnetic moment from the surface. Geospace delta B is changes to Earth's B field. And you can see how that is subsiding. This is good at showing the location where aurorae are most likely to happen, as well as induced current in the electrical grid. I'm going to let it play through here as it refreshed, and we don't edit these videos, to get them onto your screens as promptly as possible. Next, a solar system forecast. I hope all of you reverse werewolves are enjoying new moon. Let us know if you've been receiving a full 8 hours of sleep and not cannibalizing humans in the middle of the night and being a productive member of society during the day. Here's a forecast for the solar system. There's where things will be in a week. It'll be at gibbous waxing on the 10th. Today's astronomy picture of the day is Comet Leonard's massive tail. It's too dim to see with the naked eye. The tail is too long to see with binoculars or a telescope, so it's some kind of composite imagery here. The astronomy picture of the day from apod.nasa.gov. Comet Leonard, it's approaching the sun. It's going to be at its closest approach today. We'll see if it survives. And if it does, it'll leave the solar system to, quote, never return again, end quote. Next, a diagram of the sky above my head. We're located in Lehigh Valley, Pennsylvania. This is in-the-sky's all-sky chart. If you want to make your own star chart, just click on that at in-the-sky.org. Put in your location. If you're up before dawn, you may see Mars rising ahead of the sun. Where were you when Cygnus rose? Check it out. It's the most intrinsically bright object visible from Earth, otherwise known as Deneb, a high-mass X-ray binary. There is a coronal mass ejection, yet another one headed toward Earth. And it just happened earlier this morning. Let's get to looking at that. Here's the view from Stereo A and from Lagrange 1, the location of the SOHO. So Stereo A here on your left, and the LASCO SOHO C2 on your right. We've got some old data here, but you can see there was a coronal mass ejection on the far side as well as the Earth side. So they both came out of the southern hemisphere, as you can see from the Stereo A imagery. This one over here coincides with this one here. This one here has an earthly component. So that's what we're talking about. It's another glancing blow, most likely. You can see some plasma there on the top of the coronagraph. Just keep in mind it's two separate events. I would expect that to be somewhat earthly geo-effective. So another coronal mass ejection here with no sunspots really, and no flares, something we've covered repeatedly on the channel. Like our cosmology segments, if you haven't checked those out, make sure you check out our cosmology segments. Over 200 videos in our playlist at youtube.com/smashamash/playlists. Moving on to look at charging hazards, and we see some charging hazards here over the Central Pacific. Some surface charging occurring there that could cause some communications breakdowns. It's not China or Russia, okay? It's charging hazards that could be causing communications failures. Here's the 1-year chart of the relativistic electrons. That's from Solon.info. Here's the 3-day chart of the greater than or equal to 2 mega electron volt electron flux as measured by the GOES 16 and GOES 17. Those are geosynchronous near equatorial satellites. For you new viewers out there, the N's and M's, those are the noon and midnight local time for the GOES 16. The blue ones, the red ones, are the GOES 17 local time, giving you an idea of where they're located. And here's the forecast model. No arguments from me there. I would tend to agree that we'll go back into electron flux warning levels here in a day or two, about 2 days. Next, the total electron content forecast to show you the most likely locations for GPS errors. Most GPS errors occur around the equator at noon, and we've been documenting some chaos in the organizational structure of Earth's electron flux. It's actually largely returned to normal here, looking quite normally here. Total electron content forecast, things getting back to their normal mode. Next, we're going to show you the ionosphere, the ionogram of the F layer. Here's your F ionogram. That's located at about 300 kilometers of altitude. And the color blobs represent vibrational frequencies, each one 1 megahertz, or 1 million vibrations per second. We do see some anomalies here, especially in the South Atlantic and South Pacific. Also some South African anomalies, and in the Southern Ocean. So lots of low-frequency anomalies around this portion of the globe. And those have been going on for a while here. So the electron flux has gotten a little more normal. The ionosphere is looking still quite anomalously here, perhaps giving us some insight into the inner workings of planet Earth. Anyway, here's the latest image on the ionogram. That's 1345 universal time, and we can see low-frequency anomalies there on the anomalygram. That's anomaly in megahertz from the 30-day median. Let's do bonus features. First one is the ground-based solar observatory at Cerro Tololo, Chile. Coronal mass ejection warning remains in effect, folks. Once again, I would reiterate that we don't need to see solar flares or sunspots for coronal mass ejections. We forecasted a ton of them throughout 2021 without any of those features. We've got lots of filaments on the Earth-facing portion of the disk, and without getting into an in-depth explanation of how we forecast coronal mass ejections, here's some imagery of the GOES 16 SUVI. That's ionized helium, by the way, 304 angstroms. And look at all those filaments. Some of them will eject shortly. Next, your latest intensitygram and colorized magnetogram to show you again. A 0 sunspots is where we're going to be later today. That's not a sunspot. And there may be one forming up there, but not yet. That's the most likely place to see one at the moment. That little plage forming there. Again, 0 sunspots. Let's close out the video with some additional imagery of the local yellow dwarf, El Sol, Helios, the closest star, whatever you'd like to call it. And you can see the location of that coronal mass ejection. It came out of this area right here. At least the one that's more in the earthly zone, which is the one that we're concerned with. Let's close out with the SDO imagery here in 304 angstroms. Just spectacular. And thanks for tuning in, folks. May that solar wind be at your back. Opinions expressed in this video, not necessarily the opinions of Smash News Network. These busted. Name it news.